My name is Virginia Hall, and I'm here today to introduce you to Roger Rule, author of The Rifleman's Rifle and host of this series of episodes, Special Guns with Roger Rule.
Thank you, Virginia. And welcome viewers to my 19th episode of Special Guns with Roger Rule.
What do we have today?
In the last few episodes, we have been featuring mostly rifles. Today, the gun I want to cover is a side-lock, side-by-side shotgun with a single trigger. And we're fortunate to have a prime example of this by a renowned maker.
Haven't we already covered a side-lock, side-by-side shotgun?
Yes, we did in episode 7. The difference here is the innovation of the single trigger, which, as I'll point out, was really the last major addition in the evolution of the double-barreled shotgun. In episode 7, we went through a thorough history of the evolution of the side-lock ejector side-by-side shotgun, all the parts and pieces up to the innovation of the single trigger. There's a passage from Jeffrey Boothroyd's book, Side Locks and Box Locks, that I want to quote. When he says game gun, he's referring to the side lock ejector side-by-side double. So I'll quote this. By 1880, the game gun as we know it today had evolved. Little has changed, with the exception of the single trigger and the reintroduction of the over and under barrel arrangement. Close quote. So from that statement, besides covering the evolution of the side lock, we have also covered the reintroduction of the over and under barrel arrangement. That was in episode 11. But what we've not covered is the evolution of the last refinement of the double barrel gun, which is the single trigger. And in McIntosh and Trevelyan's Shotgun Technicana, another book, the authors wrote again, and I'm quoting, of all the refinements that characterize the modern gun, and they're talking about the side lock ejector, none is thought of as more advanced or sophisticated than the single trigger. The single trigger for two-barreled guns was the last stage of refinement, close quote. Single triggers had been around for multi-barrel guns before the modern game gun, but none of the earlier ones worked particularly well. Most didn't work at all. If you would like to review a full history of the evolution of the side lock, I refer you to my episode 7 of this series. For our video today, we are only concerned with the development of the single trigger, the last refinement of the double barrel gun.
So this shotgun with two barrels has only one trigger, and that was hard to make?
It was difficult to design. It was hard for the layperson to understand why the single trigger is so complicated for double barrel gun. As to be the last thing worked out by gun makers, but Jeffrey Boothroyd addressed this as well. I get another quote. The single trigger is probably the most complex part of the modern sporting shotgun. It is difficult to describe how it works, and it is the most difficult to put right when it goes wrong, close quote. By 1880, the Piotti game gun had evolved to its present day with the refined Frederick Beasley action with two triggers. It wasn't until 10 years later, 1890, that Piotti developed their first effective single trigger, a mechanical version they continued using for many years. The other game gun we followed in episode 7, the Holland & Holland Royal, had evolved with a refined action 3 years after Piotti, in 1883, but again with two triggers. That action was designed by Henry W. Holland and John Robertson, later of Boston Company. But Holland's single trigger wasn't designed until 8 years later, also in 1891, another mechanical type invented by Henry Holland and John Robertson. They received the patent for this one in 1893, even 2 years later. And that was after Robertson left Holland and joined Boston Company. However, the most refined mechanical trigger was patented for Boston Company in November 1894, again by John Robertson, assisted by a Boss gunsmith, William Adams. This latter design is generally known as the three-pull system and is regarded as one of the best mechanical single triggers. Besides the mechanical triggers, wherein the trigger shifts between the two sears, a second popular design has been around that allows the trigger to shift by the inertia of recoil. Systems of this type were used early by Greener and Wesley Richards, among others. But the most refined inertia shift single trigger was not developed until Val Browning needed to invent one for his late father's over and under, the Browning Superposed. The patent for it was issued as late as 1940. It is this design that has become so popular, with similar versions adapted for the Winchester 101 over and under and used by Piotti and Beretta. But that's another example of the single trigger being the last refinement of Browning Superposed. John Moses Browning had not even designed it by the time of his death, and it was up to his son Val to finish the gun and develop a single trigger for it.
So who is the maker of our gun today?
To represent the side-lock ejector side-by-side with single trigger, we have today one of these best handmade guns with a mechanical trigger developed from Robertson's splendid 1894 patent and built in an Italian-made side-lock by the prestigious maker Fratelli Piotti. Here's how I first heard of Piotti. In episode 11, I mentioned that while I was in London on one of my trips, planning to search for William Evans and John Wilkes, two of the last London gun makers, the old ones, I was staying in the Browns Hotel in Mayfair at 33 Albemarle Street. This was in 1996. In the hotel, going over the street map with the concierge, who learned about my mission, he told me that there was a famous maker of goods for the royal family that was practically across the street from the hotel, and they had in the last few years started carrying a line of guns under their famous name, which was Asprey, a very highly regarded name, he emphasized. Although I was mainly there to find the old best makers, learning Asprey was just across the street at 22 Albemarle, I decided to check out his information. And before I went there, I verified that the concierge's statement that Asprey is a famous London name was correct. The company stood for quality going back to 1781, I think. The company began in silversmithing and over the years received a royal appointment for their quality and had added jewelry and high-end leather goods, handbags, china, crystal, as well as their line of silver, and had continuously completed commissions in silver with the best in-house engravers. It seems that in 1991, with the number of gun makers in London dwindling, the company decided to add a line of English guns under their own highly recognized brand name. After learning this, then, the next day, I merely walked across the street from the hotel, and I saw a very inviting store with one room showing beautiful gun cabinets lined around the walls filled with guns. To me, beautiful, right? That room was joined by another one with many other high-end products, but I was only interested in the guns. It was cold, and I was wearing my cashmere topcoat. I could tell by the displays and the atmosphere of the place and the prices that their market was aimed toward a wealthy demographic, which would be, what they would call the aristocratic clientele. I was immediately assisted, and when I said I was there to see the guns, the fellow showed me a side-by-side which looked the same as a Purdy as to its shape. The one I was looking at had incredible wood and beautiful engraving, not nearly as conservative as the style of Purdy, but very well done and priced at 60,000 pounds. This was in 1996. It did not have hand detachable locks, and I was told it was built on the Beasley system, which would have meant it was similar to Pretty Action. He didn't offer to let me open it, and so I just looked it over and admired it for a moment and saw the name Asprey with a stylized tall A in the logo. The salesman then showed me an over and under shotgun made by an Italian company, Fratelli Piotti, which was the first time I had seen any gun by that maker. The agent said this was a new gun by Piotti that had just come out. I had already been to Boss in my London trip before, and I recognized this gun as being built on the Boss pattern. Sure enough, it was priced accordingly, about the same price as the one he had showed me for Asprey. When the salesman tried to guess my price range, he then showed me another line of Italian over and unders priced in the range of 20,000 pounds. I was not in, I wasn't at all in the market, being there for a totally different reason. My memory today recalls those were Rosini's, but I wouldn't swear to it. They were equally high-end outward, in outward appearance, but probably CNC guns rather than totally being handmade. I tried to find out who made the Asprey guns for them, but only got the answer that they made them themselves. I was very impressed with both the Asprey side-by-side and the Piotti over and under, especially the famous Italian engraving on the Piotti, and I clearly understood it was definitely a best gun. It was inscribed F.LLI Piotti, and at that time I didn't know what F.LLI stood for. I've since learned it's an abbreviation for Fratelli, and that's the Italian word for brothers. So it's the brothers Piotti. But I exited the premises thinking if I had the money to buy a new Asprey, why wouldn't I buy a Purdy or a Holland & Holland for about the same price? But then I had no bias or built-in appreciation for the Asprey brand, which must be the case for some of their firm's long-standing customers. I still left with the impression that Asprey stood for quality and Fratelli Piotti made best guns. Today, to cover our subject of the advanced single trigger for the traditional game gun, we have one of these best guns made by Piotti brothers. Of gun makers, Fratelli Piotti is a young company located in the pantheon of the world's best gun makers in Italy, in Gardone Valtrompia, in the province of Brescia, going back some 60-plus years to 1955. But it has become one of the world's premier gun makers. It was founded by the brothers Araldo and Faustino Piotti, building signature shotguns, spending many hours at the workbench. Because of their high quality and perfection, they had to even turn down orders in their growing years until they could continuously evolve and incorporate the methods and innovations to meet their demand without sacrificing quality. Okay, this is a pattern target. We're going to pattern our Piotti shotgun, and that's a 30-inch circle, the outside circle, and we're 40 yards away, which is the regulation pattern. Okay, I have my Piotti King English shotgun here. We're going to pattern it. It's in a foggy weather, so I want to do this quick and get it out of the air. I'm going to pattern the right barrel, which is full choke. Okay, here's the pattern board. I've marked some of the shots. It's this was number 8 shot with 1 ounce of it's a 1 ounce load, and this is about a 74% in the 30-inch circle, which is good for a full choke. And that's about it. Okay, that's good.
Those Brothers 1955, are they still in business?
Yes, the company is still family owned, but by four different brothers, Manuel, Fabio, Sergio, and Rudy. And they employ another 10 or so craftsmen with a small production of best traditional guns. They manufacture approximately 100 guns per year. Each action is machined from a solid billet of boiler steel to the most exacting specifications in-house in their small Piotti factory. This procedure is expensive, but it assures that every gun meets their demanding standards. On their models, the action size and the gun proportions are made proportional to the gauge. According to their U.S. distributor, William Larkin Moore, and I'm quoting, their production is limited to a small number of handcrafted, best quality, double-barrel shotguns and rifles. The quality of the shaping, checkering, stock, action barrel work generally exceeds the standards achieved by the London gun makers prior to World War II. The work now produced on guns by Italian engravers is the finest ever. The result is an elegant gun that is one of the best produced in the world today. Close quote. As for Piotti's models today, they offer 4 sidelock Monaco versions, numbered 1 through 4. They offer 5 sidelock King models, 2 box locks, and 1 hammer gun with an extreme array of options, many at no extra charge when an order is placed. Also, for special orders, they still make a Boss style over and under. This Piotti we have today is the King English model with handmade side locks.
The barrel looks like it's a 12 gauge.
Thank you, Virginia. Yes, this one is in 12 gauge. It's similar to the Ariza that we looked at in episode 7 in that it's based on the Holland & Holland Royal action with Purdy style engraving. It is the Purdy engraving and the English styling that gives it its model name, King English. All Piotti model Monaco and King models are built to the standards of best guns, and mechanically they build their guns with the traditional Holland & Holland Royal action with high-grade double-seared side locks, Holland & Holland Southgate automatic ejectors, and like Holland & Holland, all the other best quality internal components, intercepting sears, bush strikers, gas escape valves, chrome-lined barrels, demi-block chrome-lined barrels. This one is built with an advanced single, non-selective mechanical trigger, not the inertia type. These features generally are found only on Holland & Holland Royal, Purdy, and Boss double guns that cost twice as much. This gun has the English or straight hand stock, no pistol grip, with a classic fluted comb. The forearm is not the English or splinter type, instead is a narrow beaver tail forearm, barely wraps around the barrels. This one is extraordinarily well designed. Let me pick it up. First thing we want to do is check to see if it's safe. Check its safety. You see it's empty. In discussing the gun's English style, per all best British doubles, it's stocked to the fences. That means the wood goes right up against the action balls. Behind the locks in the stock are teardrops, sometimes called drop points. As part of the English style, there is a long inlaid trigger bow tang. Finally, the metal is full coverage engraving with a very conservative English rose and scroll. This engraving pattern is exactly that of the Purdy shotgun made over 100 years ago. As part of the aesthetics, the fences are beaded. There's this little line around here behind the action balls. Another touch only found on best guns. This 12 gauge gun has 2 3/4 inch chambers with 28-inch barrels, choked, modified, and full. The rib is the classic game type, a smooth concave rib with proper taper, for sighting pointing, and terminates with a single bead. When I open it, I can see the H&H ejectors, the chopper lumps with their bites, and the bush strikers. We'll show these features to the camera in our close-up demonstration at the side table. When I close the gun, the way it locks up gives away the fact that it's a best gun. This is a particular quality that you can just feel. I felt it first when I was at the house of Piotti in the early 1990s. I've described it in the past as closing with a quiet but solid sound like a vault door shutting, or the feel of tight tolerances when you shut the door of a Rolls Royce. Also, when the gun's closed, the safety must be engaged manually, a feature preferred for sporting clay shooters. To put the gun on safe, the safety lever must be slid rearward, exposing the word sicuro, which is the Italian word for safe. Now let's field strip it into its three major components, and we'll resume at the side table to examine these under the camera. First, press the Hansen release, move the top lever to the right, let the barrels down, and they slide right off. Just very traditional gun action. Here we are at our side table set with the amazing Piotti disassembled into its two major component assemblies housed in its leather case. Let's look at the forearm first. Examining this little assembly, we see how the Hansen push rod works. Notice the delicate edges of the wood that come up to the contour of the barrel. Also, the serial number 5840 is marked both in the wood and on the forearm iron. The two screws, side by side, on the inside of the forearm iron are engraved and indexed, even though they're hidden from view when the gun is assembled. If you recall, indexed means the screw slots are aligned. It is these kinds of touches that let you know this is a best gun. We're going to cover the finish in a moment, but while I have the forearm under the camera, note the intricately inlaid Piotti gold crest on the forearm face. Looking at the barrels from the top, we see the concave smooth rib ending with a small silver bead. At the breech end, we see that the rib has been engraved for about 1 inch to match up with the action engraving. Also notice everything is highly polished and finished with a rich deep blue. On the top of the left barrel, it is engraved F LLI Piotti Gardone V T for Valtrompia. And on the top right barrel, it is engraved with two Italian words I can't pronounce, ACCIAIO and SIAU, with 3 letters UM and 2 letters and a number UM6. This is an indication of the type of steel used. Turning the barrels over, we find the automatic ejectors. We see the underside of the concave rib, and about 3 inches forward of the barrel flat, we locate the locking lug for the Hansen push rod release. Protruding from the barrel flat, there are 2 Piotti style locking underlugs. Notice the square cuts on the back sides of the lugs, which lock up with the underbolt in the action. And notice the semicircle C cutout on the front lug, which fits around the action hinge pin. The left barrel flat is marked serial number 5840, and also it's marked CAM70, which indicates 12 gauge, and it's accompanied by an Italian proof mark. The right barrel flat is stylized has a stylized diamond surrounding FP for Fratelli Piotti. It is also stamped with proof marks, and with Piotti's code for the chokes. In front of the barrel flat, both barrels are stamped 18.5 for the nominal size of the bore in millimeters. Note on the locking lug nearest the muzzle end of the gun, there are 2 index screws, a large one with a smaller lock screw. These are for removing the ejectors. Now looking at the stock and action assembly, right off we see the strikers have bushings and locking screws, which work as register marks as well. The bushings have 2 holes for the bushing tool remover. When we move the top lever, we see inside the action the movement of the 2 locking bolts. These lock up with the underlugs on the barrels. On the water table, again we see the serial number 5840 and the maker's name, Fratelli Piotti, for Brothers Piotti, and a proof mark and some very light inspection marks. On the left side lock plate, we see the pins for the side lock and 4 index screws, 2 of which are locking screws. On the right side lock plate, we see the side lock pins again and 2 index screws, 1 of which is a locking screw. Underneath, on the right side of the trigger guard, in very small writing, the action tang is signed by the master engraver Giuseppe Brigoli. He was one of a trio of master engravers in Gardone, Italy, that Giancarlo Pedretti studied under. The other 2 were Angelo Bagliani and Stefano Tonoselli. This trio was considered 3 of the greatest Italian engravers of their time. While the engraving for this shotgun follows the conservative layout of the Piotti style, consequently it does not show the engraver's creativity, but the fact that this is a world-class pattern and done by Giuseppe Brigoli means that it is as fine a reputation of this type of engraving as any in the world. The gun comes with a nice leather case with the maker's label and many accessories. A 3-piece cleaning rod, 2 nickel snap caps, and a nickel oil bottle, and a little compartment for cleaning components. Inside the upper left corner of the case is a second label showing specific information for this model. That's in Italian, but it's King English is what it says. Let's return to our set and discuss the finish and summarize. Looking at the finish of this remarkable gun, the metal has nice contrasting colors. The polished coin finish receiver and lock plates contrast with all the other parts, which are deep rust blued. We also mentioned that the engraving is in the Piotti style, but we should add that it's full coverage English, rolls and scroll, and no part is omitted from the engraver's tool. The 3 screws on the underside of the long trigger bow tang are engraved and indexed, a touch required for a best gun. 2 of those screws have locking screws, also engraved and indexed. Locking screws are rarely found on Spanish guns and are a true sign of a handmade gun.
I really like the warm brown color of the wood.
I agree with you, Virginia. I particularly like the warm brown color. That's a good description. Let's look at it, the wood. We've already talked about the style of the stock being an English straight hand stock with a semi beaver tail forearm. The wood is English walnut, and because it has dark streaky figure and some light fiddleback, it would be a fancy grade. The hand checkering is executed flawlessly in the traditional point pattern. The 2 panels of checkering on the grip come together with border designs above and over and under the wrist. The semi-beaver tail forearm has a pattern of 2 panels of checkering that create a diamond shape of uncheckered wood in the center and come together pleasingly at 2 points above and below the diamond shape. And in the center of the diamond shape, it is inletted with Piotti's gold crown crest, as we saw at the side table, and you can see in some of the still shots included with this video. The hand checkering on both the stock and forearm are masterfully cut at about 26 lines per inch, very small. We've already said the stock is fluted and has the traditional teardrops or drop points. Notice also that the toe the toe line actually is inlaid with a gold oval about 2.5 inches from the toe for the owner's initial, and this one's vacant. The butt is fitted with a matching brown leather-covered recoil pad, perfectly fit, about 3/4 inch thick, making the length of pull on this one 14.25 inches with a small cast off for the right hand. The drop of the comb is 1.5 inch, and the drop of the heel is 2 inches. We've already shown the forearm release at the tip, which is the one designed by William Anson and patented in 1873. This is the most popular forearm fastener ever created. Looking at the stock work gives away the fact that it's a best gun with a delicate and elegant inlaying of wood to metal fit, the side locks, the top of the fences, the upper tang at the wrist carrying the safety, and on the underside the long pointed trigger bow tang. It also has an ornate perforated top lever. We see the same perfect wood to metal fit on the forearm as well, with the inlaid Piotti crest along already mentioned, and the intricate forearm releases cushion at the forearm tip. So that's it. I think we pretty much covered this example with a single trigger in detail. Did you learn anything, Virginia?
I had no idea the single trigger was such a tricky deal.
Yes, I always liked the idea that Browning's son was able to follow in his father's footsteps and invent such an amazing patent of a single trigger for his father's superposed that even his remarkable father hadn't yet accomplished before his death. So just to sum up, this gun was a perfect representation of a side-to-side side-lock ejector shotgun with the last refinement made on these guns, a great mechanical trigger. I hope you viewers can appreciate as much as I do. And that's it for today. Thank you, Virginia, and thank you, viewers, for watching. And if you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and share with others. And I hope you join me for the next episode on Special Guns with Roger Rule. If you want to get involved with these types of guns, I recommend GunsInternational.com. The owners are great people. I know them and have been using their website since they started. I find it the best source for both buying and selling any great collectible gun.